I hope the readings this morning trouble you. I hope they make you unsettled. I hope they cause you to think. I'm going to give you a little context, hopefully not too much of a boring geography lesson or a history lesson, but just to make it make sense. And then I'm going to take you into how all of this applies to us. As opposed to last Sunday, this week, I didn't write a sermon on hydrocodone, so this is not a sermon based upon a drug. Okay? We're doing a little better. How many of you have Bibles in your house? How many of you look in the back of the Bibles and see the maps that are usually there? Everyone notice once in a while? Okay, you should do that sometime. Take a look at, because it will give context to what you will read. If you look at the back of any Bible, of what the land which today we call Israel, Syria, Jordan, that area, which was the Roman province of Palestine, essentially the area was divided into three geographic, political, ethnic parts. There's Galilee in the north, Samaria in the middle, Judea in the south. All three of these people, their heritage is Jewish. They were once one people, but they're not really anymore. Even by the time of Jesus, they're not. They're all Jews, but they all do things a different way. They all worship God a different way. They all have their own understanding of God, and there's a lot of animosity, especially for the people in the middle. Okay, those of you who are middle children, you'll identify with this, okay? Because the middle child is the one who's neglected. The middle area is the one that gets this important. Poor Alistair is getting taught by his father right now. I was an older, sorry. I can't identify. Basically, if you wanted to go from the north, the Galilee, from where Jesus lived, and you wanted to go to Jerusalem, if you went north to south direct, it was 3 days. You could walk it in 3 days. You could walk it in 3 days. Okay? It might take me a little longer right now. But people didn't do that. They were afraid. What they did when they traveled was basically, they traveled down in Galilee as far as they could go before they got to the border, the recognized border of Samaria. And then they would hang out and walk as far across the Jordan River, as far as they could to be safe. Go down the far side of what was called the Transjordan at the time. And then swing back in and approach Jerusalem through the best area to cross the river, which was Jericho. The city of Jericho was right there, and that's where the river was the easiest to cross. It would be kind of like if I were going to go and visit Brother Rick at White Plains Hospital, if I were going to go from South Salem to White Plains by way of Boston. That's kind of the way they did it, and there was a reason for that. Ethnic enmity, racial unrest, religious animosity basically marked the relationship between those who considered themselves to be purely Jewish and those who lived in Samaria. The people of Samaria were basically a people of a mixed race. They were the descendants, and we're talking about something that happened 700 years before the time of Christ. We're talking about holding a grudge, okay? 700 years. These are the people whose ancestors had once lived in that area, who were transported out. Other peoples were brought in as slaves, and they intermarried and intermixed, so that they're not purely Jewish anymore, and they're not either ethnically or religiously. And they had nothing to do with each other. And if you were Jewish, you did not walk directly through the land of Samaria. You just wouldn't do that. It's kind of like walking through certain neighborhoods in the city at night. Just know we don't do that. And yet Jesus makes it very clear. He's going to approach Jerusalem going down that straight route. And the question is why? What does that have to do with any of us? It has something to do with the notion of tolerance, and it has something to do with the notion of sending a very subtle message. And the message to them was, look, what I'm about to do in Jerusalem, I do not do for my own people. I do not do for the people of Judea. I am doing for all of you. As a matter of fact, I do it for all who ever have lived and will live. No one is outcast. No one is rejected. So he makes this trip. And interestingly enough, he is not accepted. And of course, two of his closest followers, with all the love and compassion that you kind of associate with them, say, Lord, why don't you call upon God to just burn them up? You know? And Jesus basically says, get over it, move on. What we have in front of us today, though, to consider is on that journey, and I want you to think of Samaria as a metaphor, in a sense. Because in our own life's journey, there are the areas we don't like to go, no, isn't there? There are the people we don't get along with. There are the people who don't care for us, the people we don't particularly care for, the family members, the relatives by way of marriage. We have to deal with the people we work with in offices, the classmates in school who we do not like because they're really quite unlikable. There are so many people in our lives that in our heart of hearts up here, because it doesn't really get to the heart, it stays up here. Yeah, we know Christ died for them, but we don't really believe that. They're outside the scope of salvation. Because some of them hurt us, and they hurt us very badly, and they hurt us legitimately hurt us. And it is so hard to forgive. So Samaria can be a metaphor for our own journey. But on this journey, people stop Jesus along the way. And he offers them an invitation. He says, come on, I want you to follow me. And you notice they all have an excuse. I've got to do something. Usually it's a good excuse. I've got to go bury my dad. I've got to go take care of the people at home. And what Jesus basically says, all right, go. But if you're not going to follow me, if you're not going to be a priority, then don't follow me at all. That's harsh. And that's what I want you to consider this morning. The Lord makes it very clear on our journey with him, if we're truly to be his disciples, he is a priority. He's not a convenience. And if we really follow him, if we truly believe, then just like Paul speaking to those Christians in the area of Galatia, those cities in Galatia, he says, look, if you're truly a follower of Jesus, there are certain ways you cannot live. And if you're truly a follower, there are certain ways you must live. And if you're truly a follower, there you will find the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the kindness, the generosity, the fidelity, the list. And there are certain ways you can't live. The enmity, the idolatry, the strife, the jealousy, all the things that are on. I'm so glad I did not prep you this morning, right? I didn't ask you to do them one at a time. I hope you'll take that home and read it and reread it and reread it. And then ask yourself the question, how do we really live? And is Christ our priority? Or is he a convenience?